Hello Forkis, match for the World Chess Championship is the most important tournament in the world of chess. This year, the current champion, Ding Liren of China, will try to defend his title against Gukesh D, the winner of the Challengers tournament. But before we jump into the first game of this year's match, I will try to explain the time format of this chess championship. So, on your screen, you will see the time format, and of course, both players start with 120 minutes, that means 2 hours, and they need to make 40 moves until the first time control. When they both reach the 40th move, they will gain 30 minutes and they will gain 30 seconds from move 41. That means that there will be a lot of time scrambles. That's not something we are used to, and also players can flag each other if one plays really quickly and the other one will spend more than 2 hours to make 40 moves. He will just lose the game on time. So now you know the time format, and let's see what happened in the first game. Kish has the first white pieces in the tournament, and of course the whole match is consistent by 14 matches, 14 games, and the first to reach 7.5 wins the championship. So Gukesh opened the match actually with pawn to e4 here. Of course, developing with the king's pawn is never bad, and now we expected Ding to play e5 here, the most solid continuation, or to play like c5, trying to get into sharp Sicilian defenses. Maybe he has something prepared in the Sicilian as well, but he surprised all of us by playing pawn to e6 here. And this is the French defense. And in the every single match of the World Chess Championship, the French defense has only been played 3 times from the black side, of course. Now, Gukesh responded with pawn to d4, which is, of course, the best way to play against the French defense, taking the space in the center, of course. What can be better than taking space? And now the main idea of the French defense is to push with pawn to d5. Well, the French defense is slightly more passive than the Karakan, which starts with c6 and then plays d5. Um, and here, usually the most trendy line recently actually was to push with e5. Many grandmasters has played um, this e5 advanced variation here. But Gukesh chose to play knight to c3 here. Of course, the e4 pawn was attacked. Now it is defended by the knight from c3. Now I think the main line is to play bishop b4 or knight to f6. So Ding played knight to f6, but after knight to f6, Gukesh pushed the pawn to e5. This isn't the main line, I think. I think the main line actually is to play bishop g5 here, or to take the pawn, but doesn't matter. Gukesh pushed with pawn to e5. And of course, both players have something prepared in the French defense. Of course, they had a training camp where people and their seconds looked at this French position. Of course, now Ding played normally with knight f to d7, back, preparing c5 next. Of course, going to g8 is not really good. Um, and now the main line is to play f4 here, gaining some space in the on the king side. Excuse me. Now c5 is the main idea of the opening black is playing here. c5, knight c6, and trying to open up the diagonal for this light square bishop. And now the main line, and what 99% of people play in this position, is the move knight to f3, continuing developing the king side knight, also defending d4, maybe trying to play bishop e2, bishop e3, maybe queen d2, long castles, maybe even short castle. And in this kind of positions, let's say this is the position they have reached. Black has the idea to attack on the queen side with a5, a4, and a3. What have happened in the game, will as we will see. The idea of white is not just to allow this pawn storm to happen on the queen side. The idea of white is to play g4, maybe h4, and f5, and breaking open the king side and attack this black king, ultimately resulting in checkmate. So yes, what Gukesh has played, the main line is knight f3, and 99% of people do play knight f3 here. But his prep was to play knight c to e2, and this is a very weird move. Well, as we are beginners in chess, we were beginners, people told us not to move the same piece twice in the opening. But why is Gukesh doing that in so important match as World Chess Championship in the first game? And of course, in the first game, you don't want to lose. In the first game, at least a draw has to be made, and if you win, well, that's great. But playing this weird sideline in the French defense that Gukesh has prepared was just weird to see. Now, of course, Ding played knight c6 here, spending maybe 2 minutes, nothing special. But of course, he wasn't expecting knight to e2. Knight to e2, he was prepared to face knight to f3. And of course, the whole idea of playing knight c to e2 is to play c3 and have very solid center here with the idea to attack on the king side with pawns with g4 and f5 and knight f3 and bishop e3. Perhaps this is white's idea. And now, as we so earlier, the idea of black is not just to allow this pawn storm to happen and get mated while castling short. The idea of black is to attack on the queen side, and that's exactly what current World Chess Champion, did. He played pawn to a5 here. He of course spent like 30 minutes, which is huge. Spending 30 minutes on the seventh move of the opening of the game in the first game of that important match is just, I mean, it is what it is. Of course, playing a5 here is very good. It wasn't the top engine move. The top engine move was to play bishop e7 and just try to castle and maybe play for f6 here. Also, a5 is just preparing maybe b5 because the bishop is blocked by the knight on e2, and also to push with a4. So, um, here, of course, the best move is to simply keep developing with knight to f3. Also, there was an impossibility here to play a3, stopping any further advancement. But then a4 and your b2 pawn is very weak. It cannot move forward because of en passant, and a3 would be very weak. For example, b3 takes, queen takes, your a3 pawn is just very weak, and knight a5 is a very good move here. And yes, it is -1 for black in this position. So, Gukesh has prepared this position and play knight f3 instantly. Maybe with an idea to push f5, maybe just to develop maybe g4 and then knight g3 and then bishop d3 and castles. This is one option, to play g4 firstly and then put the knight on g3. Now the best move for black is simply to keep on developing. You have reached the state of point, the point of states, whatever, that you have pushed your a pawn, which is very good. You will have some pressure on the queen side, but just keep developing. For now, play for a f6, be solid. Ding spent another 2 minutes here by playing pawn to a4. It's not bad move. It's simply not the best anyway. Um, but yes, a4. Now a3 was probably the best move that white could play. Also, bishop e3 is just fine, as Gukesh played here bishop e3. And he still has this position prepared. He's in the book, as chess players like to call the prep. Now, Ding didn't choose to play a3, which was natural move, but after b3, yes, you have some space. b2 square looks good for a knight, but how can it actually get to b2? You will see later in the game. But yes, I mean, he simply developed with bishop to e7, trying to play f6 or castles short here. And now Gukesh was still in his prep, and he played pawn to g4 here. And now we see his cards revealed. He's trying to mate Ding on the king side. This is just a very nice approach by white, by Gukesh Dommaraju, by India, from India, excuse me. You're simply trying to checkmate the world chess champion. I mean, that's how chess should be played. It's an attacking, excuse me, and aggressive position, aggressive game to be. But black is slightly better, or at least equal by the computer here. Now the best move was to castle here, uh, and just allow f5 to happen. But after f5, you're simply very good after takes, let's say takes, and then simply f6. You are kind of sacrificing this pawn, but you can sacrifice the piece actually. You can play here. I mean, it's not a sacrifice because you're threatening here and here. So if you take here, what I'm gonna do, I won't take back. I will take on f3 here, let's say queen takes, I mean make a queen rook takes c8, and this is just completely better position. You have sacrificed a piece. You'll maybe play e4, queen f8, bishop h4. I mean this position looks just worse for white, completely losing actually. The best move in the position is king d2, which is very sad defending bishop, but still after queen b6, I mean. So that didn't happen. Ding didn't chose to castle. Ding played the move queen a5 after another 15 minutes of Ding, and now he's down to 1 minute, to 1 hour and 11 minutes. And of course, time pressure is there even if you have 1 hour, because he still needs to make 30 moves, and he only has 60 minutes to do so, or 70, let's say. But this is still very big time pressure by Gukesh. He has this position prepared. He looked at it um so extensively, and I mean queen a5 is a good move. I mean the idea is that you're pinning. Maybe you're trying to play a3 and then take here, for example. And here Gukesh started to think on his own. He is no longer in prep. Um, I guess he would be in prep if Dink chose to castle here. But still, so queen a5 was on the board, and now bishop g2 was played. The engine doesn't love this move. It's not a bad move, though. The engine preferred the move queen c2 or a3 here, stopping any a3 ideas by black himself. But bishop g2 is very logical move. Excuse me. You're simply trying to castle, maybe play knight g3, just be solid, and then try to attack. You should firstly castle and then try to open up the f file where your rook will be. Excuse me. After bishop g2, black played the move a3 here, and the engine doesn't love this move either. But after b3 here, and c takes on d4, of course, white needs to be careful here, because if you were just to take the pawn with the e knight, then there is queen takes on c3. There is no bishop d2 here. I mean there is, I guess, but you play queen d3 pinning here, or just pressuring the knight, pressuring the position. This a3 pawn is super strong. Maybe bishop before with knight takes is an idea. And it's just completely better for black. So you cannot really take here, blundering the pawn on c3. And the best move, and what Gukesh played, and what Gukesh looked at it when playing bishop g2, is the move pawn to b4 here. Of course, you're firstly attacking the queen, and then you will, and then and only then you will recapture the pawn taken on d4. Here there is one variation that needs to be considered, which is to sacrifice the knight. Why? Firstly, why? Before I show you the variation. Well, why? Because, I mean, this is hanging bishop, so if you take, and then after take, you take with the bishop, it is check. So if king f1, for example, then I take the bishop, and I'm winning indeed. But why the sacrifice doesn't work? Well, because of bishop d2. And now you're simply down a piece. You have zero compensation. It's just completely winning for white. Maybe not completely, but without zero problems here. Um, and yes, you have 3 pawns for a piece, but this pawn is about to fall, and you will open up the king side and just win the game. So of course, the move that Ding chose wasn't to sacrifice the knight for nothing. He chose to play queen c7, which is of course the best engine move. Now, and now white needs to make his mind. How will he recapture the pawn? There are four different ways. Three of them are good. First bad way to take the pawn is to take with the pawn. I mean b4 is hanging. With bishop takes or knight takes b4, of course, then you simply resign, I guess. But there is one. There are two knights that can capture the pawn on d4, and one bishop and one queen actually. But then knight takes queen. So I guess there are five ways to take the queen. To take the pawn, not with the. I mean. So he chose to take with the e knight, which is very logical. The knight on f3 is perfectly placed. Trying to maybe play f5, and then this knight also defends the e5. So this knight on e2 was just pretty bad piece. And on the move, where did he play knight e2? On the move 6, Gukesh predicted that his knight on e2 will land on d4, and his position will just be fine. So that's actually what has happened. Um, just a second here. Um, So yes, he took with the e knight, which was of course the best move. Um, Now black could take the knight, but it's not very good move. Why not? Well, you are just releasing the tension, and after bishop takes, defending the pawn, you are not winning the pawn on c3. So why would you do that? Why would you do that? It makes zero sense. So Ding played the best move once again. He played the move knight to b6 here. What's the idea of knight to b6? Well, to go to this juicy c4 outpost, excuse me, to go to this juicy c4 outpost, you cannot attack this knight by any of the pawns because there are no pawns to be pushed to b3 or to d3. It will just be a perfect knight on c4. So now Gukesh decided to castle because what can you do? You cannot prevent knight c4 really. Um, and Ding said, well, if you're really gonna allow me to play knight c4, I will play knight c4 myself. There was maybe a move knight d2 here to prevent the move knight c4, but then takes, bishop takes, not the best. So yes, takes, now excuse me, a knight c4, of course, attacks the bishop. You cannot allow that. You cannot play anything else but bishop f2 here. The computer is suggesting one more move here after knight to c4. The move is queen to e2, allowing to take the bishop. Why would you allow it? I have no idea. I guess the argument is to be made knight is worse on c4 than the bishop is on e3. I guess that this is logical, but still, you have the bishop pair. Why would you give it away when there is a potential for a position to be open? So bishop f2 is, I think, generally very good move with an idea maybe to play bishop g3 when this fork won't be a problem anymore, and then just push with f5. Of course, the pawn would be defended there. I guess still not, but in with some preparatory moves, then bishop g3 would be a very good move and a very good idea. Now, of course, Ding had an opportunity to castle or to take the knight here. Both moves are perfectly fine, although maybe castling is slightly risky, but still is just fine. He played bishop d7 anyway, just developing the only piece he hasn't developed, the only minor piece that he hasn't developed. The rooks are still undeveloped, but doesn't matter. Bishop d7, maybe with an idea to go to a4 in some positions, maybe to pressure the queen side supporting b5, just to connect the rooks in the future. So this is very logical move, nothing special, but he's down to 36 minutes and he needs to make 24 moves until they reach the time control. So that means that he virtually needs to play one move every single minute and a half. If he would be spending 2 minutes every single move, he would just lost on time, which is insane to be that low on time. Although 36 minutes sounds nice and a lot of time, without time bonus, time increment, making 24 moves in 36 minutes is just insane. If you have ever played the standard slow chess, that then you should know that this is just a very little time to make 24 moves and you are just out of the opening. But still, okay, bishop d7 was played here, and now queen to e2 with an idea that this fork is no longer a problem, and maybe bishop g3 and f5 is an idea. Of course, now the queen is also defending the pawn on e5, and the rooks are now connected. And now suddenly Ding decided to take the knight here. And just one thing, here after bishop d7, Gukesh had 80 minutes left on the clock. That means that he only spent 40 minutes. And then he goes and spent 33 minutes on a single move like queen 2. That means that he's uncomfortable in this position. Why would you spend 40 minutes on queen e2 when it's just so natural move? You have slight edge out of the opening. You're pressuring the current world chess champion on the clock as well. Why would you go and throw 34 minutes out of the window? That I think was a strategic mistake by Gukesh. Of course, you should spend time if you don't know the position itself. But I mean, spending 34 minutes on a single move like Queen E2 when having time advantage is just mistake, I think. So now, yes, Dink releases the tension, excuse me, with knight takes on d4. Now, knight takes on d4 was chose by Gukesh. He spent 6 minutes again. I mean, Of course, you want to take with the knight, although bishop takes is also a possibility. But knight takes is, I think, slightly better. Trying to play f5, next move for bishop g3. Now the position, yes, it's equal. You should maybe take with the bishop, and you would have an edge. But it's the position is equal. But now knight to b2 was played, and when I saw this position, I was in school. But doesn't matter. I saw this position. I was in school, and I said, "Wait, wait a second. Dink is pressuring for the win. Why can I say that? Well, yes, Gukesh has some play on the queen side, but does he really have that much? Will he open up the position even if f5 can be played? What then? You don't have nothing in this position. And knight b2 attacks the c3 pawn, and I thought Gukesh is just worse in this position. I don't care that the computer says the position is even. I think Gukesh has serious problems in this position. Now the pawn is attacked, and you should play queen e3, which was the best move. But spending two tempi on this, I mean, of course, queen e2 was just played, and then queen e3, defending the pawn again. The computer liked the move bishop e1 here as well, but queen e3 is also just fine, nothing special. Um, but now rook c8, and wait a second, there is a pressure Dink is piling on c3, and on the time they are now even. Now rook c8 was played, but rook c1, excuse me, was played defending the pawn. But I mean, these two pieces are on the same diagonal, and there is also a bishop there. So that means that if h6 will be played, then you will never push with f4 because of bishop g5. That's also something to look after. This skewer would just lose the game for Gukesh. Nothing special, but if they go to time scramble, that's sort of a tactic he might miss. Now queen c4 was played, attacking the a2 pawn, and I just thought he's worse here. I thought he was worse here. Of course, I'm talking about Gukesh. Now f5 was played, and what was I talking about? About this, of course, you can play bishop g5, but I mean that is a potential for the bishop, and if the queen moves, then I can bring the bishop in and just be better, I think. So now queen d3 was played by Dink, another great move, and the computer didn't even realize how good this move was. Queen d3 is very good move. Of course, if you take on a2, and that's just bad because of rook a1, queen c4, and you can just um pick up the a3 pawn, and then you are defending c3. You have the open a file for your pieces, and you are not winning, but you are better. So f5 was played. Dink didn't take the pawn, although Gukesh wanted to take the pawn, but he of course didn't. He played the great move queen to d3, and now I think there was only one good move for white here. Maybe there were more. Also, like queen takes is just bad, but I mean, for example, playing like h3 is not even that bad here. For example, um, but yes, the best move in the position was to play g5 here, allowing queen to get trailed. But then I'm defending g5. I'm defending f5. I mean, yes, you have the pressure, but I'm at least not losing here. If knight d3 here, I just play rook c2, rook cd1 is also fine. Um, and yes, I think this is just okay. Of course, you lose a pawn here, but you can play bishop f4. You have the good diagonal here after knight c6, I guess. Knight b5. I'm getting to c7, maybe to d6, and it's okay for white. White has enormous compensation for one single pawn. So queen d3 was played. Gukesh had 30 minutes, and this is the first time that Gukesh had less time than Dink. Maybe the move before still. Um, Now he played the move queen e1, which it's not losing, but it is very bad move. I don't know if he missed the move bishop g5 here, but bishop g5 is so good of a move that I think it, he took it by the surprise. You cannot block the attack to the rook, well, because bishop e3 simply queen takes or bishop takes anyway, wins the game. And after a rook to c2, you're still defending c3. Of course you are, but now the bishop is in, um, and black can just castle, pile up the pressure on the c3. How will you even move something in your position? Well, Ding should have castles here and just be perfectly fine. Maybe with b5 as well, as the arrow is pointing here. Maybe with knight c4, maybe with rook c4 and then rook c8 and just win the c3 pawn, win the a2 pawn and just promote this to a queen. And it would be winning by the computer. It is minus 1.8. That means the black position is completely winning. Maybe not completely, but almost winning. After rook c3, rook c2, black played rook c4 though, which is slight inaccuracy as we call it in chess. What's the idea of with rook c4? Well, the idea it is not that castle and then rook c8. If I play move like h3 here, my idea was to sacrifice the rook, and after bishop takes to take the rook here, and I would simply be up a piece with a completely winning position. Um, so Gukesh of course didn't miss that. So he played pawn to h4 here. And now if you were to sack your rook, it simply doesn't work because I win my piece back. I'm having a lot of great moves, a lot of great ideas here. My c3 is defended, my a2 can be defended by the queen, maybe rook f2, and then I'm just trying to open up the king side and maybe mate you. The position is equal here, but I think white has severe winning chances if anyone has. So h4 you cannot take the knight, but you can play very, very good move. Bishop to f4. Why is this move so good? This move is so good because it's simply restricting all the pieces by white. It is virtually a zugzwang. That means that you are still threatening to take here. I cannot defend c3 anymore because I have to defend my rook here. I cannot move the rook anywhere because the pawn hangs and then the knight hangs and it's just game over. So the best move and the only move actually in the position is to play queen b1 here. Just defending the rook, and this is no longer a threat because the rook is no longer hanging on b2, but on c2, excuse me. But wait a second, who is defending c3? No one. So Ding simply takes the pawn. He's up a pawn after rook takes c3, rook takes c3, queen takes c3. And also e5 is hanging and b4 is hanging. So now the best move was to simply play knight to e2, forking the two pieces. But Gukesh chose to take on e6. And now, and only now, Ding had the opportunity to win the game. This is the biggest advantage we had in the game, minus 1.9. Only if you take with the bishop. Why? Well, you don't want to do this if you are white, because then d5 is perfectly fine. Your good knight from d4, let me just put it on the board here, from d4 was traded for this bishop, this French bishop that didn't move once in the game. For example, I mean, one move bishop d7, and now you're gonna trade it for this great knight on d4. So after f takes on d4, excuse me, Ding should have captured with the bishop, but he didn't. He took with the e pawn, with the f pawn, excuse me, and now it's back not to only minus one. Better, severely better by white, but not winning. After 92, the only move for white, queen takes on e5. Here we go. The second pawn has fallen. Now knight takes on f4 and queen takes on f4. Wait a second. Ding is suddenly up 2 pawns and has a fork here. And the only reason this engine says it's only minus 0.1, it's only minus 1, excuse me, is because of a single move. The move is bishop c5. This is the only way not to lose the game. Why? Well, this king is not castled and it's in the center, and that's our source of the counterplay, of the compensation. And if we took the g4 pawn, then Gukesh can play queen c2. This is also the almost only good move. With an idea of bishop d6, maybe queen c7, and this would be like mate. So after knight a4 here, which is the best move, pressuring the bishop, The only move once again is to play bishop d6, still not allowing black to get castled, even rook f8, I mean just checkmate, so you cannot get your king safe. Queen d4 is the best move. After rook f2 only move, if you go to the h file then this is check, so you just resign there. There is knight c3, bishop c5, and queen to d1. And this is the end game probably Gukesh has missed. And he almost, I mean, he had 10 minutes on the clock to make 10 moves. It's hard. But now the only move that doesn't lose for white is rook f3, and probably that's what Gukesh has missed. That a3 will fall, and then his position is not losing anymore. But he had 10 minutes to make 10 moves to make, and only having 10 minutes, of course I don't blame him for playing the move queen c2. Now the game is lost by the computer. Why? Well, you cannot take the pawn because queen c7 wins actually for white. I mean, you have to castle here, and then you give away the bishop, and it's hard. um if you don't castle though, after queen c7, after queen c4 and queen c7, then you will just get slaughtered on the back rank, and you will lose the rook. But there is only one move that wins. Of course, you cannot take here either because of some bishop c5. It's not that bad to take on g4, but the best move and the only good move in the position that wins easily is to play queen c4. And of course, Ding found this move. And also, Gukesh is down to 5 minutes to make 10 moves. So even if he gets okay position now, he needs to make blitz moves, which is very hard. Now, queen d2 was played, the good move, nothing special with an idea of bishop e4. And now the only move that wins for black once again is not to take the a2 pawn, because that would be almost mate after bishop c2 like here, and mate on e7. This would be losing. The only move that wins for black easily is to castle. Calm and collected move castle. Now the king is safe and you have zero compensation, Gukesh. And Ding said, prove me that you have compensation. He didn't have the compensation. So he played bishop d4 here. Of course, trying to make some counterplay. If rook takes, I take with the bishop. I have good position with queen g4 and queen g7 mate. So this wouldn't win easily. The only move, once again, that Ding found, and it was the only good move, was to play knight d3. And this is very good move. This is great move indeed. Now the bishop is attacked. All kind of problems are there, and Gukesh spent 3 minutes here and played queen e3, which was the best move, but still it's just completely lost by white. And he has 45 seconds to make 7 moves until the time control. So he played rook takes f1, and Gukesh only spent 1 second recapturing that rook. e5 now played, which is only move. Why? Well, you are pinned. That's the idea. I will simply take your knight and will win the game. But Ding calculated that he can play pawn to e5 here. He can play pawn to e5 here. Why? If I take with the bishop, attacking your queen, I can take here, and then this endgame is winning. Why? Let me just show you this. Yes, you are up to pawns, but if the bishops would be the opposite colors, then the position would be a draw. But wait a second, the bishops are both on the light squares. So that means the endgame is winning, and Gukesh and Ding, excuse me, saw that with playing e5. So he took the pawn. You cannot take here, well, because of your queen is hanging. But of course, you can take on g4 with check. After bishop g2, you can play the move bishop f5 here, defending the knight and threatening bishop e4, and this would be made. So now bishop g3 was played, stopping this pin. Now bishop e4, only good move once again, because I was threatening mate on e8. I'm threatening mate. It's -3 for black, but I'm threatening mate. With 2 minutes and 40 seconds, even players like Ding can miss checkmate. If you're, oh, how will I mate him? Maybe I have some, I don't know, here. I mean, here also stops the mate, but you get what I'm saying. Bishop e4 is the only good move. If takes, I take, and I'm just completely winning with some check here. Pick up the a2 pawn. So king h2 was played, and now with 2 minutes and on the clock, Ding played h6. The best move by the computer, asking Gukesh what he will do. h6 wins the game easily. Now bishop h3 was played, and you can see it's -4. and Gukesh has 4 seconds to make a final move. After queen d1, Gukesh played the move bishop d6 here with 1 second on the clock, as you can see. Um, of course, the position is lost. Why? After queen c2, this is a fork. It's a double attack as my channel's name. So after queen c2, king g3, now they have both reached the 40th move. They have 30 minutes on the clock. So Ding calmly and collected, calculate, queen takes on e2, wins the game. Why is this move so impressive? Well, it's not. I'm taking 3 pawn. Yes, but you needed to see that after bishop e6, king h8. If you play king h7, apparently, not apparently, after king h7, the game is a draw. Why? Queen takes on e4 is check. Queen takes on e4 is check. After takes, apparently black has enough pawns to draw this game, but he's simply down a bishop. Wait a second. Why then does queen takes on a2 even works here? Isn't there bishop e6? Well, there is, but you play king h8. Why? Why did Gukesh resign here? Doesn't he get to play queen takes on e4? No, my dear friend. Black won't take, blundering it into a draw as previously covered. Black, after takes, will play the move queen f2 check, and after king g3 will take the free queen. And after king h8, the world championship challenger Gukesh Dommaraju from India resigned the first game. And in all the championships over the history, only 11 times the player with the black pieces won the first game. Do you know the result of the match when black won first game? Well, 9 out of 11 times the black player won the championship. Does that mean that the current World Chess Championship is also the future World Chess Championship, World Chess Champion? Let me know in the comments below. But before you leave, please leave a like and subscribe, and in the comments, leave me your thoughts. See you guys tomorrow. Bye bye.